And welcome into the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk from First Bet and Express Bet. Each week we review 5 hot topics in horse racing, and we're going to review some of the top performances going towards Breeders' Cup Friday. The Future Stars Friday card and features 5 stakes races for all the different divisions in the 2-year-olds, going short and long, turf and dirt. And this is our first of 2 weeks in a row where we're going to do these sort of look aheads towards the Breeders' Cup for you here on the It's Official podcast. Jeff, we're talking 2-year-olds and a lot of Europeans. I know you've been scouring the internet for video.
I tell you, Friday's card, which is what we're looking at. When I say Friday, the first of the 2 Breeders' Cup race days are for the 2-year-olds. And there's a lot of research to be done because this is a great melting pot. You've got horses from the East Coast and the West Coast, but just as importantly, you've got horses from the Far East and Europe. And to evaluate these races, we don't have the luxury of comparing buyer numbers and things like that. I think the eye test is going to take over. Is that how you look at these cards? I mean, do you put extra emphasis on what you see as opposed to what you read?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, the past performances don't mean a lot to me with the international horses because I don't have context with them, but my eyes don't lie. And so when you watch a video of a horse, you can tell a good one, whether you're watching, your local racetrack, you're watching the big tracks in America or a big track worldwide. And I remember going back to doing research back when Goldakova was first coming to the United States. She had ended up winning the mile 3 years in a row. But the first time I laid eyes on her in video, I said, I've never seen turn a foot like that. She became an automatic circle. I'm like, I don't care who she's running against. So that's what we're trying to find, right? We're trying to find that visual clue that can really set us off. The other thing when you're talking about some of these international races and 2-year-old races, this is one spot where trainer interviews, I think, are kind of important with the international horses because they're far more honest than our American trainers are with how their horses are doing and what excuses they've had for why they ran poorly or why they're running well now. And you can find a horse in comments from a trainer by digging through sites like Sporting Life and Racing Post and just, your basic searches on various search engines and go back and read like when they ran in July, what happened that day, or going into the race, they were basically saying, we're not ready to run this race. You can kind of see where the giveaway races were and where they were really knuckled down to run hard were. And here in the US, we just don't have any giveaway races anymore. And if we do, they're not going to tell you they're a giveaway race. So I think there is some stuff to read, but it's not necessarily in the past performances, Jeff.
It all boils down to a gut feeling sometimes as you watch a tape and you say to yourself, okay, that horse can run. Okay, I know that. Or I don't know about that, and you can't use the context of who they're running with sometimes, and the going changes. Sometimes you get impressed and you realize, but they're running in a bog, and that's not Del Mar. So sometimes you gotta, be careful. But one thing I will say in starting the process of going over the logical contenders, not only on the Friday program, which we are discussing today, but the Saturday as well, is that other than maybe Cogburn, I don't see a slam dunk, this horse can't lose winner type of horse in any of the races. And even Cogburn, I mean, he's got a break, he doesn't, you never know. So this is a challenging, but couple of days, but that's the way we like it, right? It's fun to see 4 or 5 champions run, but they're 3 to 5, you're gambling, you can't bet on them. You don't want to try to beat them. But in this year's edition of the Breeders' Cup, both days, there aren't many slam dunks. You're going to have to do some research, and there's some good prices to be found. You just got to find them.
Yeah. I hope it's better than last year. Last year was a parade of $6 and $7 horses. It was just up and down the line. I forgot how painful it was. I went back and updated my databases about a month or so ago and started the research towards this year's Breeders' Cup. And as I'm inputting everything and I'm going through the results, I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, it was just like a parade of logical results, which, on Breeders' Cup Day, you're looking to hit some boxcars. So let's hope for some better prices this year at Del Mar. And we'll see what we can shake out. And we start our research right now here on the It's Official podcast. So let's go to our first topic this week. We're going to take the races in order. This is the official race order as presented right now, according to Breeders' Cup. They say it's not going to change. This is the order that they're going to go. So Friday's first Breeders' Cup championship race will be the Juvenile Turf Sprint. 5/8 of a mile, 2-year-olds here we're talking about on the grass. And looking at some of the probables, we'll know the official pre-entries a week from tomorrow. 8 days from now, they'll come out next Wednesday with the pre-entries. All the pre-entered horses will be sent into Breeders' Cup on Monday, and then those names released on Wednesday. So just a couple more days for connections to make a decision whether they want to come to the Breeders' Cup or not. So there's going to be a lot of travel plans made, and you're going to see a lot of news and notes on who's coming and who's going. But these lists we put together with our best look at who the probables and possibles could be. The United States horses in all the divisions, we're going to put down the left side. All the international horses with their country of origin to the right side. And as we look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, Asterius is the favorite in the international betting. Big Mojo, both offered right now about 5.5 to 1, according to oddschecker.com. We'll give you some updates on the prices of these horses as we talk about them throughout the way. As for the American horses, Governor Sam was a big winner at Keeneland. He's run off a couple in a row. Mentee is a horse who won in New York in the Futurity. We'll talk about him in just a bit, whether he goes short or long. Jeff, there's not a just standout on the American side. The Europeans, Big Evs, came over and won this race last year. Which side of the column are you looking at?
This is one that the Euros are going to dominate. And I do believe that there are 3 on the right-hand side of that list that have every right to win it. I'm trying to evaluate the strength of the juvenile sprinters over in Europe versus the ones here in North America. And from what I can gather, and the conclusion I have come up with, is that the Euros are better, much better. They ran really well. Of course, Big Evs won last year. He was coming off a win in the Flying Childers. And I think the 1-2 finishers in that very same race this year are maybe not quite as good, but maybe better. I mean, you just don't know because they're on various stages of development. But Asterius and Big Mojo, who are the co-favorites, and it's almost impossible to separate them because they're both outstanding. They finished a head apart in that same Flying Childers. They're both straightforward colts. They look like good athletes. They break well. They've got speed. They've got quality. They've got proven form. They're not one-hit wonders. They've been good throughout the whole summer. And they're both supposed to show up. That's Asterius and Big Mojo. And then on the bottom, you see Whistle Jacket, who got beat last time out as a short price favorite. The colt that beat him came back and won a big race the following week. So that form is held. He's very quick. In fact, he might be as quick as anything in the race. I think he is. So don't dismiss Whistle Jacket. Those are the 3 that I will be leaning on as of now when I approach the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Well, let's give the fans maybe their first chance to see all 3 of those. Asterius and Big Mojo were in action in the Flying Childers Stakes, as you talked about. Let's go to Doncaster for that one back on September 13th.
As they blaze down past the halfway point in the Flying Childers. Tropical Storm down the centre with a narrow advantage from Mr. Lightside. Asterius on the near side is driven hard, going pretty nicely in the sheepskin noseband. There is Big Mojo. Magnum Force is coming there strongly. So too Zare on the far side. And here comes Tropical Storm on the far side. Asterius rallying on the near side in a wide open Flying Childers. They come inside the final half furlong. And it's Big Mojo on the far side from Asterius on the near side. Asterius beginning to get up. Asterius won the Flying Childers, Big Mojo and Magnum Force back in third.
From the Watson barn, Asterius could be coming over from that big win at Doncaster last time. Also in the international cast that Jeff talked about, Whistle Jacket for trainer Aidan O'Brien. This is a son of No Nay Never, beaten at 4-5 in the Middle Park. But previous to that, he was a favorite in the winning Group 1 Prix-Morny in France. Let's go back to that one.
Meters to go, so 2 furlongs from the finish. Estepona, the big price Blue Mike going okay. Shareholders ridden along, a little bit hidden against the running rail. Polly Vega, 4 from the left, beginning to make some progress. Arabian Dusk is there as well. It's still, though, Whistle Jacket in the green showing in front. Rashabar on the left is producing the biggest challenge as they race towards the line. Daylight and Arabia, the next couple of runners. Whistle Jacket in front. Rashabar trying to get to it, but Whistle Jacket has made all to win to Rashabar in second place. Daylight, Arabi and Epsom Blue Sen with the next group of runners.
And Jeff, when you see these Europeans on the lead in these races, that's kind of what you almost need to see when they come to the U.S., right? I mean, there's European speed, then there's American speed, but the ones you don't want to be too far out of it. Big Evs last year was right up into the mix right from the get-go. You don't want to be coming from 10 out of it here, going 5/8 at Del Mar. So Whistle Jacket showing that lead all speed last time out could certainly be a factor in this kind of race. As for the Americans, we thought Dream Away was the best horse turf sprinting in the U.S. And Dream Away, the filly, she won easily in the Colleen Stakes at Monmouth and just looked like she could be any kind, a debut winner at Keeneland in the spring. But when she came out your way, she was absolutely an empty third in the Speakeasy Stakes in a surprising defeat. That kind of looked like it was just a nice setup to get to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint for Wesley Ward, but it didn't go as advertised.
She was awful. I mean, that's all I can tell you. I mean, she looked like she couldn't win, couldn't lose, made the lead, got run over in a race that was won by an ex-maiden claimer. It's just, you could throw the race out and pretend that she didn't run it, but it's hard, but she did, and you're right about the fact, if you look at the horses on the left-hand side, Dream Away is quick, but the rest of these horses are horses that show speed, but they're not blaze away from the gate type of speed. Whistle Jacket, as you saw in that race at Deauville in France, was on the lead from the inside and was able to beat a colt that had won at Royal Ascot, a very, very good colt. Big Mojo is got speed, and Asteris does as well. They've shown it also in the past. So this is a better than average, maybe a quite good edition of this race if you take into consideration how good the form is over the Euros. Whereas the Americans on the left-hand side, I'm just not seeing it, Jeremy. Yeah. Menti comes off a nice win in the Futurity on the grass, and I think he'd have a much better chance, and we'll talk about him if he actually runs long. I don't think he's quick enough to stay up with the others or good enough. So as I mentioned, I'm going to approach this race initially with figuring that I'm going to back the Euros. Which ones? I'll watch them train. I'll have my ear to the ground and see if I can learn something. But other than that, I think the Euros definitely have an edge here over a race that they've done well in the past.
If Jose D'Angelo gets gabbled onto the gate, that will be a horse to consider. He hasn't run since that trip to Royal Ascot when he was second in the Royal Windsor. He was the horse who won early this year, was a win early 2-year-old with the debut win in the Royal Palm Juvenile down at Gulfstream. He might be the best of the American Turf sprinters. We just haven't seen the horse in the U.S. since May 11th and run anywhere since June. But Gabaldon's certainly interesting if he can.
He's interesting, but I haven't seen a workout on him, so I don't know if what he's doing. Maybe. Right. I don't know. He's got a couple of weeks yet to go, and if he goes out there and breezes a half in 47, I guess you could say he's all right. But I have not noticed him at all. So again, you look at those horses. Governor Sam's a nice colt, but I don't know whether he's done anything more than just a nice colt, beating up on a bunch of horses that aren't that good. So again, you look at this race, and it's you always want to win the first one, because the first Breeders' Cup race kind of gets your confidence going. Again, going 5/8 over a Del Mar's course, you better be in the fray. You're not coming from out of it. So if you're not first, second, third, or fourth, you're going to be in trouble.
Looks like the top 8 wagering choices, according to oddscheckers.com, are all international horses, including the Japanese horse, Akoro Sieg, third choice in here at about 6.5 to 1, 13 to 2. So that's a look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint right now, as we're 8 days out from the pre-entries and a couple weeks from the race. Europe and Asia look like they are going to be very tough to beat in the turf sprint. We will see, though. It's 5/8 of a mile at Del Mar. It's going to play like that pool table you always say out there. So we'll see if the Americans might have a little home cooking. But we'll have to see the final fields for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf and Juvenile Turf Sprint and get more of a sense of who's going there. Okay, so let's go to our second topic this week on It's Official. We move from the Turf Sprint to the Juvenile Fillies. The Juvenile Fillies on the dirt, one of the original 7 Breeders' Cup races. Yes, there was once 7 Breeders' Cup races, Jeff Siegel. You and I remember that way back in 1984 at Hollywood Park. 7 races when you handicap the Breeders' Cup felt like an exercise back then. Now, when we got 7, that doesn't even get you through Saturday's card with 14 different divisions in the Breeders' Cup. But the Juvenile Fillies has been one of those races over the years that's lent itself to some spectacular fillies and future stars, and it's also lent itself to some crazy results. This has been the biggest feast or famine division in all of Breeders' Cup history. There are years when there's just a tap-in putt, an ironclad filly that just can't be beat, and then there are years where you scratch your head and say, how did that happen? What do you think this year, Jeff? Is the 2-year-old filly division, congealed yet for you, or are we looking at something that could be crazy?
Well, first of all, we're going to go to school on Del Mar's main track. There's a Thursday program, so we'll watch and see if the pro speed bias that existed throughout the entire Del Mar summer meeting remains. And Del Mar can be anything. It can be anti-speed, as we saw on Breeders' Cup Day a few years ago, where inside speed stopped, the rally widers won, but not this summer. And I have a hunch it's going to be similar to what we've seen so far, this year and during the summer meeting. And if that's the case, I don't want a deep closer. You don't have to be in front. Now, if you're lone speed, you're probably going to outrun your odds if they let you alone. But I think you got to be in the fray. You got to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And looking at this race and watching the video and comparing the numbers and all that, I don't know too much about American Bikini other than she is an American Pharaoh filly. She's the Japanese invader who won her last 2 starts in one-away fashion. She might be good. How would I know? I have to do more research than I have so far. But in looking at this race, Scottish Lassie, to me, she just blew me away winning the Frizette. 1-turn mile, but this is a stretch out. That's fine. I like the 2 1-turn races and a stretch out for her. Left her previous form behind when she won that race as a maiden and did it with a big, big figure. And she did it with the perfect style, Jeremy. She sat third. She was head and head into the stretch, and she just left a pretty decent field for dead from the furlong pole to the wire, winning with something left. And again, bred to get a middle distance. I really do think that she is the one to beat if she can run back to that race. And again, she's one I want to watch Breeze. I want to see a good Breeze and be able to tell you, Jeremy, she's as good, if not better than she was the day she won.
Frizette run at Aqueduct, typically a Belmont fall meet race, but still a 1-turn mile, regardless of the venue over the years in most of its renewals. These horses have stretched out around 2 turns in the Breeders' Cup with tremendous success out of the Frizette. No race has produced more Breeders' Cup champions out of a single prep than the Frizette has towards the juvenile fillies. I think the number is 16 now after just FYI won last year. The Spinster is one behind in the Distaff division and also had Idiomatic win out of that race last year. So they're kind of going neck and neck for the most productive races in the history of the Breeders' Cup, but the Frizette still a length in front of the Spinster. Let's go back to that Frizette and give people a chance to see an impressive maiden-breaking performance in the second career start. Scottish Lassie with authority.
And Social Fortress. Here's the oncoming strides of Scottish Lassie, and now Scottish Lassie is sent for home. Scottish Lassie is now opening up on the field, and look at Scottish Lassie open up. A final furlong left to go. Scottish Lassie is now widening this margin and opening up in the Frizette. It is going to be all Scottish Lassie punches her ticket, and she's on to the Breeders' Cup. She wins the Frizette easily. Scottish Lassie wins it over Snow White, finishing third. That was Social Fortress with another cliche in 1 minute 36 and 3.
Want to give you a chance to see the gallop out there because she is one that's going to be stretching out off of that race in the Frizette to go the 2 turns. Ears up in the gallop out, and she looked awfully good doing it. Jorge Abreu with definitely, I think, his biggest chance ever in a Breeders' Cup race. That was the race in New York, the race at Keeneland in the spring. We thought that in that race, the Alcibiades, that Immersive was the 8-5 favorite coming off back-to-back wins. She had won the Spinaway at a price. When she got to the Alcibiades, she was stretching out around 2 turns for the first time for trainer Brad Cox, and she ran her record to 3 for 3. She's by Nyquist, who was undefeated when he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Let's give the fans a chance to see Immersive, and then maybe you can kind of compare and contrast who probably will be the 2 favorites for this year's Juvenile Fillies.
Rich City Girl is the leader. Liam at the dust drops back to the inside. Immersive goes to second. Quick Kick goes to third. Still 5 from the lead. Top of the short stretch as they turn for home. Continuity fourth. Here's Immersive. Immersive comes forward. Has the lead. Quick Kick is taking aim from the outside, but she's second. But here she comes now in the short stretch. Quiet Side on the far outside. Immersive to the inside has the lead. Immersive chased all the way by Quick Kick. Immersive and Manny Franco to win the Darley Alcibiades.
Godolphins, Immersive, 3 for 3. Jeff, okay, let's set these 2 up. If you had to head-to-head between the 2, I think you're leading Scottish Lassie.
Well, if you saw Scottish Lassie's win, and the field was strung out from there to JFK, and really Immersive, when I see 5 fillies or 5 horses in the picture as they hit the wire, that's usually not an indication of a strong race. So if you compare the Beyer numbers, and again, Immersive had one extra race under her belt. She earned an 80 Beyer in that race, and Scottish Lassie in her win earned a 90 Beyer. So it's very difficult for me to make a case for Immersive. The only good thing about her is that she does have the same kind of tactical speed that Scottish Lassie has, and that's what it's going to require her to get the kind of trip that she's going to need to pose a serious threat. She got that trip in the Alcibiades, and that was good. Clean trip, outside, no dirt in her face, moving when she wanted to move with no pressure. So she did what she had to do. I love her pedigree by Nyquist, obviously, out of a mare by Bernardini. So she's got a right to improve, and I think she will run her best race. But I don't know whether her best race. It's hard for me to say that it's her best race is better than Scottish Lassie.
Right. Now, on the West Coast at Del Mar, they ran the Sorrento this summer. That was won by Nooney. Then they ran the Del Mar Debutante. That was won by Tenma, her stablemate for Bob Baffert. Then those runners went to Santa Anita to go 1 mile and a 16th in the Oak Leaf, and it was yet another Baffert non-compliant who stretched out best. But, Jeff, I get the feeling she wasn't as visually impressive, non-compliant. She was best of the group, and she's probably best of the Bafferts again at 1 mile and a 16th in the juvenile fillies. But the Eastern horses look like they might have a little more zip than the Bafferts, and we don't usually say that.
No, I mean, she won a race. Here's the thing is she was even money in that race. So on the one end, you say, well, she's very well regarded, and everybody knew how good she is. And the other tells you that maybe she wasn't beaten all that much. And she was beating a filly in that race who was second, Nooney, who was all the rage during the summer, but she's a sprinter and had been well beaten in her previous start. So she got that great trip. Again, somewhat similar to Immersive, where she's got the right style. She can sit second or third, relax, switch off, and make a run. But she finished out rather slowly. The Beyer number, again, 81. Normally it's not bad, but it's nowhere near what the filly that I like, Scottish Lassie, can do. So she's going to have to step forward. I think she will. I think she will run better in her next race than she did here. But she doesn't have a great monster blast in the final furlong. She only won her maiden by a length and a half. Again, the same thing happened in that race where she was close up and you expected her to kind of explode in the final furlong, and there was no explosion. So I think she'll run well. But again, looking at this field, if these are the three main players and going in, it looks like they are going to be, absence any kind of story we get from American Bikini from Japan, then to me, it's going to be very difficult to pick against Scottish Lassie, assuming she breezes well in the interim, and hopefully we'll be able to see those workouts or whatever workout we can see to come to that conclusion.
If you're gambling, I guess the positive is that Brad Cox trains Immersive and Bob Baffert will have a fleet of horses in here. They're going to take money, right? So that will help. If you like Scottish Lassie, that might help you get an extra. Maybe that might be worth 2 points on the tote board, having the second and third choices being for Cox and Baffert. That might get you 2 points higher. Now maybe she should be 6-5, and that's only going to get you up to 8-5 or 9-5. We'll see what the field size and who all ends up in here. One other filly just to mention here, La Cara. We haven't seen her since winning the Pocahontas. She's won 2 in a row for Mark Cassie. She's by Street Sense, of course, a Breeders' Cup Breeders' Cup juvenile winner back in his day. Nyquist, the juvenile winner's got horses in this race. Some good Breeders' Cup history, if you will. Good Magic's got Snow White in here. So some horses who have had success on Breeders' Cup Day have fillies here in the upcoming juvenile fillies. That'll be the second Breeders' Cup race on Championship Friday. Let's go to our third topic this week on It's Official. We move down the Breeders' Cup program for the Juvenile Fillies Turf. Now, when you take a look at the history of these races for the Breeders' Cup on grass, you think, okay, Europeans in this race, Europeans in that race. Europeans haven't had much success in the Juvenile Fillies Turf, Jeff. This is one where the Americans have held shop pretty well, but it's typically Chad Brown with just, a fistful of contenders from all the different prep races that he could lay his, hand out there. And and to stave off the Europeans. What do we have from the U.S. this year? What do we have international? Let's take a look at the potential horses and names you want to know, and let you talk about some of these horses that you've got your eye on. Let folks know we've got the matron winner in here, Abiento. Abiento starts things off at the top of the list there. The Natalma winner, and One More Time, coming down from Canada. Of course, this horse was based in New York for Mark Casse during the summer, won at Saratoga in the maiden ranks. Others in here of interest amongst the American horses: Mayday Ready won the Jessamine Stakes, now 3 for 3. Trainer Joe Lee for Katie Rich Stables. Small time operation there. You'd love to see a filly like this have success. She's a $325,000 Tappet daughter. So while she comes from, lesser known connections, she's certainly well bred and well met. Frankie Dettori's been aboard all 3 wins for that one. That's Mayday Ready. Scythian looked awfully good in her win in the Miss Grillo Stakes, and that's been a pretty key prep for this race over the years. Bill Mott trains that one. Won on October 6th, one of the last preps in this division, but looked awfully good doing it. She was 11-1 that day. Tis the Law, another good win early, young sire there. So totally justified. The filly I thought was going to take the Jessamine Stakes. She ran second, got beat a dirty nose in that one. I'm still smarting over that defeat, but maybe she could make amends for Rusty Arnold if she were able to get in the field. She won the PG Johnson at Saratoga. So that's a look at the American contingent in here. As far as the Europeans, Jeff, there is one who kind of stands out here, and I know you want to talk about Lake Victoria.
If she comes, and that's kind of an if. The only reason why I think she might is because it's Aidan O'Brien, and he loves to. I mean, if he's going to bring 12, he might as well bring 13, right? Whatever number he's planning on bringing here. He's always been effusive in his praise of this filly, telling us how fast she is, and yet she is a daughter of Frankel. And people who are over there that cover the sport have always asked him, yeah, you say she's fast, but shouldn't she be better over a distance of ground? And he says, yeah, you would think so, but she is fast, and she's won all 4 of her starts, all of them sprinting. She actually won a race called the Moigler 2 races back. She was 5-1 in that race because she even though she was coming off a group win, she wasn't blowing people away. She was workmanlike, and nobody was quite sure how good she was. So she wins the Moigler, comes out of that race and wins the Shively Park. Looks amazing doing it. Numbers, the Racing Post and the time form numbers have risen. So she's going to have a legitimate backing among the Euros and even among the Americans, and saying she's really one of the ones. I don't know if she is, but she's close. And if we look at the group here, if she comes, she's going to get plenty of play, even though I think the Americans are better than normal. This is a good group of American fillies, unlike the Colts. I think this is a really good group. I think thought process is absolutely terrific. She's got the proven form of the course, but I keep coming back to Lake Victoria, and I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going to lean quite yet. But Lake Victoria's Moigler was the race that tipped her off, because we believed in her after that race, and then she won the Shively Park, and she won it even more impressively. And as a daughter of Franco from Aidan O'Brien's barn, how do you look at an undefeated filly like that and toss her out, or the worst maker one of the favorites? She might even be the favorite. But again, the Moigler race that she won at the Curragh really stamped her as potentially a terrific filly.
To go is Lake Victoria. In the lead, racing just outside the final 2 furlongs, Bedtime Story from Simmering. On the outside is Exactly. Right in behind them is Red Letter. Lake Victoria brought to the outside. Racing to the final furlong, it's Bedtime Story flat out from Exactly on the outside. In between fillies is Simmering. Red Letter runs on against the rail. On the outside is Lake Victoria. Any one of the 5 in the might there. And down the outside it is Lake Victoria, who's claimed them all from Simmering. Exactly on the far side was Red Later. Last was Bedtime Story as Lake Victoria stretches out her unbeaten record as 3 in the Moidlair for Wayne Lorton and Aidan O'Brien.
She was reaching out well there. She came back and won the Shively Park, looking good. Now, the American who's waiting in the wings has all the home court advantage here. And maybe of all the horses that ran at Del Mar over the summer, there were some, we thought Sweetest Azteca and the Filly and Mare Sprint, the Chosen Veron and the Sprint maybe were kind of Del Mar's best chances in a Breeders' Cup division. But as we get closer to the World Championships, the filly Thought Process may be Del Mar's best chance for a Breeders' Cup winner. She was excellent there over the course of the summer, Jeff. And then you just saw her in your backyard in the Surfer Girl. Let's give the fans a chance to see how she just did it in facile front-running style last time out at Santa Anita.
They still have to catch Thought Process, the prohibitive favorite, just bounding along under a strong hold as well. Tequila and Therapy pushed along in second. Kasalu at the rail. C'est la vie, Charlie in the blue colors. Behind them, Tigerish looking for racing room. And Jack's Magic Girl far back, top of the stretch. And Thought Process has opened up a 4-length lead. Kasalu in second. Center of the course, C'est la vie, Charlie. Tigerish at the rail. But they had no chance. Thought Process in another league. Thought Process wrapped up throughout, scores by 6, and it could have been much, much more.
She's impressive. She reminds me a little bit of Lady Eli, as good as she was in this division a couple years back. She's a daisy cutter. She gets over the ground really well. She's got that, just clips over the grass and that top of ground running that you're going to get at Del Mar. I think she fits really well in here. Looking at oddschecker.com for the juvenile fillies turf, Lake Victoria at 7-4. The latest word I saw, which was on October the 7th, about a week ago, Aidan O'Brien said that Lake Victoria is not going to run in Europe again this year. If she runs again this year, it will be in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. So if she's here, she's the 7-4 favorite, according to oddschecker.com, and the wagering going on overseas. Heaven's Gate, the other Aidan O'Brien, 9-2 second choice. Others are all Thought Process at 10-1 is co-third choice. That would be a great number if you could get in on that internationally, I would think right now. But, if you're looking ahead to Breeders' Cup horses that I really like on paper and by visuals, Thought Process is one of those.
And the thing about her last race is, even though she was on the lead that day, and you might downgrade it a little bit because she was able to make the running, her previous 2 wins on grass, she didn't make the lead. She sat third or fourth, was switched off beautifully. And then when they asked her to run, that's a great comparison with her and Lady Eli. I mean, she just exploded. Mm-hmm. And you can see her last race, it was so easy. She never took a deep breath. And she was never asked to run at any stage. She still came home at 11 and change. Her numbers are very, very strong. And it doesn't look like she's really ever been asked, So, and the tactical speed, not that she needs it, but she's already won 2 races over the Del Mar turf course on that course at the same mile distance. I mean, maybe the European Lake Victoria is all that, but she better be and then some, as far as I'm concerned, to be Thought Process. And with all the reputation, you've got an Aidan O'Brien, unbeaten Group 1 winning daughter of Franco, versus what you just saw, Thought Process. Mm-hmm. I'll put you on the spot because I need help. Who do you make favorite in that race?
The European.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
If Lake Victoria's here, she's the favorite.
Okay.
But Thought Process, if she's not here, I could very well see Thought Process as the favorite, based on the other horses who may or may not be coming from Europe. We'll have to see the final entries. But based on what we kind of think is going to show up here, Lake Victoria would be favored. Thought Process would be second choice in my mind. Yeah. We'll see, this is one I know you have to do odds before they draw and things like that, but this could be one of those either ors, right? If somebody gets a terrible draw, parked out in the 14 or something like that, you may not, change your mind a little bit or something like that. Right. But I hope we get that showdown, because that would be great. And look, if the Americans are going to have success on the turf against the Europeans, this is the division where they've just had the hammer. So we'll see if Thought Process or one of the other Americans can swing it this year. Like you said, it's a good group, though. I mean, the fillies really coming out of the Jessman. I always get suckered by the Jessman. I know I've mentioned this on a couple podcasts, but every year somebody just totally impresses me in the Jessman, and I think they're going to be the next thing, and it just doesn't work out. Those fillies are just miss right now, but they're not necessarily Miss Future Star. So we'll see about the Jessamine Stakes this year. But I thought the ones coming out of New York were good. The Bill Mott horse in there, Scythian or Scythian. Scythian. I think she can run. The one to Miss Trillo. She would be right there. I mean, I think she's going to be a big factor in here as well. So interesting race.
I'm going to give you a long shot from Europe that may not win, but you have to use in your exactas and tries. And her name is Shantae. She's an Irish-bred filly. She's coming off a win. What I like about her is that she's 3 for 3, and all of her races have been at Leopardstown, which is a left-handed American-style track. She's got a wicked turn of foot. She has tactical speed, and she can really lift in the final furlong. Somewhat similar to Thought Process. Now, I don't know who she's been beating. Her numbers are good, not quite what it needs to be to win. But again, she's a 2-year-old filly's only had 3 starts, and she's really, really good. So I mean, to me, there is a 20-1 shot that I would keep in your hip pocket just in case. Shantae, coming in from Ireland, where I was visually impressed with her performance.
I'll put that in my pocket every day at 21.
Yeah.
I'll put 10-1 in my pocket. You're going to give me 20-1. I might use the back pocket, the front pocket, and
there's going to have to be some 20-1 shots in this race, because not everybody is going to be single digits, and there are a few in here. You mentioned a horse like Scythian and a few others that. They're going to get some play there. People look at them and they know they don't know this Irish horse, but I do. I think I do.
Friday's Glamour race is next up. It's the Road to the Kentucky Derby. We just skip right past the Breeders' Cup. It's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It's going to tell us who our main players are for next year's Triple Crown, the championship for the 2-year-olds on the line for dirt racing here in the United States. Mile and a 16th for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Out on the West Coast, you would expect that Bob Baffert would have a strong hand to play. He's had several different pass the baton to each other this year. As we take a look at some of the names to know in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile division, Bob Baffert's got Getaway Car. He's got Gaming. He's got some other horses that have Citizen Bull, who last out beat both of those in the American Pharoah Stakes. But it seems like the East has some major plans for this year's Breeders' Cup. And the Midwest, of course. We say East and we throw Kentucky in the East, but our Midwestern brethren would be upset with us by calling that the East. Chancer McPatrick out of New York is East. He's won the 2 big races at Saratoga and at Aqueduct, Champaign most recently. Jonathan's Way, the winner of the Iroquois Stakes in Kentucky. And then more recently in Kentucky, we saw a tremendous performance, maybe the performance of the year from this 2-year-old division, East Avenue, in winning the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. We're going to get a chance to look at that race first, and then we'll talk more about the division and some of the other main players. But right now, the headline act is East Avenue off his win at Keeneland on the first Saturday of the meet.
There's a quarter mile to go. They're coming to the top of the short stretch, and East Avenue leads it by 5 lengths as they turn for home. Ferocious second a length, and Dapper Moon is third off the final turn. It is East Avenue working into the final furlong of the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. Maintains a 5-length lead back to Ferocious in second. Dapper Moon is third. East Avenue will prove much the best in the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. Tyler Gaffalione checks over his shoulder. A widening margin at the wire for East Avenue. 1 minute, 43.17 seconds. He wins it. Ferocious home second, followed by Filoso, who made up a lot of ground to come from far back.
Nobody around in the gallop out. He had plenty left in the tank. It was speed favoring at Keeneland opening weekend, no question about it, but I don't think it mattered one bit as well as he ran. Ferocious, the runner-up, was very well met. This was a horse coming out of Saratoga that I picked to win the race in the Breeders' Futurity, and a lot of other folks did as well. And he was just rendered second best on that given day, Jeff. Ferocious could move forward to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as well. But let's talk about that headline act there. What do you make of East Avenue?
Well, I love him. Getting back to Ferocious, though, who was second. And I liked him, too. Don't get me wrong. But he threw a fit in the gate, had to be reloaded. I'm going to give him a pass on that, other than he strikes me as the kind of colt who could do that again. I mean, he looks like he's got maybe a loose wire there somewhere. But East Avenue, I generally try to steer clear of horses that are short prices whose form is based on 2 front-running, speed-controlling type of trips. I'm making an exception to the rule here because I think he's been in front only because he's so much better than everybody else. And I don't think they are going to approach this race with the idea of saying, he doesn't need the lead to win. Usually when a trainer tells a jockey the horse doesn't, or the press anyway, he doesn't need the lead to win, it's usually wrong. He does need the lead to win.
He does need, right?
But this one I don't think does. He's just a great athlete. His numbers are powerful. He won his debut by 8. It could have been 15. We showed that when we made him a future star. He comes back and is actually pulled up to a walk inside the 16th pole, beating a good field. He runs fast, 95 Bayer number, being by Medaglia d'Oro out of a mare by Ghost Zapper. He should not only run long, but get better with age. I don't even think we've seen even remotely the best that he could offer, and he could be a superstar. We don't know. He's got to get tested. This is the best field he's seen. But, man, I can't tell you how impressed I am with East Avenue. I think Chancer McPatrick's a good colt, too, but I wonder if he's a one-turn horse. And the Californians are just not even in the same league, I don't think, this year.
Well, let's take a look at Chancer McPatrick. Of course, he won the Hopeful Stakes when he beat Ferocious by a half length that day, rallying. Then he came back in the Champagne, another one-turn race, but stretching to a mile at Aqueduct. And he got it done a little bit easier in that one as the heavy 1-2 favorite.
To go. The posted half mile time 45.59, 3/4 in 1 minute 11-1, and the leader is Tip Top Thomas, but has to deal with Chancer McPatrick, who's rolling down the center of the racetrack. Tip Top Thomas to the inside, Chancer McPatrick with every shot to run this rival down, and now Chancer McPatrick is in front. A 16th left to go, was last, now first, and Chancer McPatrick wins the Champagne impressively and punches his ticket to the Breeders' Cup. Chancer McPatrick wins it over Tip Top Thomas. Finishing third was Moplex in 1 minute 36.51.
Decent gallop out there, but maybe not as strong as you'd expect for a closer. And what you said, Jeff, maybe he's a one-turn horse, right? And he's got that move, but maybe not a true two-turn star. He's by McKenzie, first crop sire, who's doing tremendous things. McKenzie and Vacoma are just going crazy with the 2-year-olds this year. Chancer McPatrick is for trainer Chad Brown, and Chad Brown has come to Del Mar with an Eastern 2-year-old and won this race. He did it with good magic. The other time Del Mar hosted the Breeders' Cup, the juvenile was won by Bob Baffert's Corniche. Baffert's got a couple in here, Jeff, that are just solid, but he doesn't have one that's better than the others, right? It just seems to be a trade-off. Citizen Bull won the American Pharaoh, Gaming won the Del Mar Futurity, and then earlier in the season he had Getaway Car winning the Best Pals. So it's similar to what we saw in the juvenile fillies division with Baffert, where the 3 big West Coast races, he's won them all, but he's done it with 3 different horses in doing so. Does that mean, is it one of those deals where if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback, they like to say in football? Like if you have 2 that are just as good as each other, you don't have a great one.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I am not high on the Baffert horses in terms of this context. I could get better next year. But, this group of the California 2-year-olds are very average at best. I don't know the first thing about auto racing, okay? But when they have an accident, like a crash or something, right? Don't they have a thing called the caution flag or something?
Yeah, they put up the caution flag, right?
Okay, well, I'm going to put up a caution flag for Chancer McPatrick, and here's why. Getting back to that race we just saw in the Champagne. Went the first half of that race, the field did in 45-2, and then went the second half of that race in 51-1, which means, was he really closing, or was he just picking up horses that were waving the caution flag or whatever they wave? And again, what we didn't see about that, what we didn't see on tape in that race was the fact this horse was dead last down the backstretch. You can do that in a one-turn mile because you got plenty of pace to run at, and you can get your momentum going into the far turn. And by the time you hit the quarter pole, you're picking up horses that are exhausted.
Yeah.
If you do that 2 turners at Del Mar over a speed bias track, you have no shot. I don't care who you are, And if you look at Chancer McPatrick and then look at East Avenue and see the difference in the tactical speed that these 2 have in a race that you probably will need to be fairly close. I mean, it's apples and oranges to me. And that's not taking anything away from Chancer McPatrick. He's a very talented colt. He's got a lot of ability. He's got a big engine, but he's probably going to give away too much. Now, if this race were in New York at a one-turn mile, which we've seen, we've seen the Breeders' Cup Juvenile on a one-turn mile in the past, then I would give him a much better chance. But going 2 turns at Del Mar, when you're trying to run down a horse like East Avenue, good luck.
And we talked about this on previous podcasts. I mean, he's been doing it with 1,100 feet stretches. Now he's got
Yeah,
to do it at like 880,
800
890 at Del
exactly.
Mar. And so he's got 70 yards less once they turn from home. So you got to get into the race a little bit early if you're a horse like that. Let's talk about one other horse in the juvenile before we turn the page, and that's Jonathan's Way. He was so impressive at Saratoga in his career debut, making up for a disastrous start. He came back and won the Iroquois in his next start at Churchill Downs. We haven't seen him since, Jeff, but the little bit we've seen of him, Jonathan's Way has been one of the more impressive 2-year-olds in this crop, and I got to think that he's going to come ready for Phil Bauer. He's had plenty of time to train him up to this.
No, I mean, no question about that. I mean, I hadn't mentioned him in all the things that I've been saying about this race, but I think he's better than the California horses for sure. I loved his maiden win at Saratoga. He came back and won the Iroquois. He did the first race from off the pace, so because he didn't break. Second race, he was on the lead. I love that versatility. So you can put him in that race saying, be wherever he's comfortable. Don't worry about it and see if we're good enough. Buyer-wise, he's fast. He's not as fast as the favorite, I don't think, but he's 90. He got a 90 buyer, and that's pretty good. It was a forward move off his debut. I haven't seen him train. I haven't seen any workouts from him since. I know he's been training regularly. I know he's healthy, but I'd sure like to see him go. But he's in my top 3, absolutely, maybe in my top 2, and that's how good I think he is. He's going to be a major player, and if you don't want to, I mean, you probably will get a decent price on him. I mean, you're not going to get double digits, but you're going to get a decent price on him.
As for the Japanese lightly raced runners in there, Akura Azel and Shin Believe maybe the one more interesting of the pair at $800,000 Ocala sale in March of this year. So this horse was made to win early, dominant winner in the first career start. Hideki Mori brings this one over, a son of Constitution. Shin Believe maybe the stronger of those 2 Japanese. We'll have to see those train when they get over here and get a better sense. Again, you just won't be able to look at the running lines of those horses and get a good sense. We'll try to get video on those horses if they get over here and enter, and try to analyze some video for you race week for a couple of those Japanese contenders. But that's a look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as we go to our 5th and final topic here this week on It's Official. It's usually Stars of Tomorrow, but we've got our spotlight for the Juvenile Turf. It'll be the 5th and final race on Future Stars Friday for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf on the grass at Del Mar at 1 mile and a 16th. Let's take a look at some of the horses who are considered on the watch list right now. Names to know for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, a strong European influence in this one as well. We talked about the horses from the U.S. doing well in the Juvenile Fillies Turf. This has been much more of a European ball game. And Jeff, looking at the list that we have from America this year, maybe that's going to continue. Dream On, a horse who ran 3rd in the Summer Stakes. Ironman Cow was promoted to victory by DQ. Mentee could go in the Juvenile Fillies Turf Sprint if they don't decide to go long. We talked about him already. Minaret Station was a 38-1 winner for Will Walden when he won the Bourbon Stakes at Keeneland. So not a lot there. The Zuma Beach second place finisher, Sabertooth on the list. Tistastic, probably amongst the better U.S. horses. He won the Juvenile Mile at Kentucky Downs, but no horse from Kentucky Downs has gone on to win a Breeders' Cup race that same year. So Tistastic would be trying to buck some history there and carry form from a somewhat unknown locale in terms of Breeders' Cup success. And then you've got Zulu Kingdom on the bottom, who's probably America's best hope in here if Mentee doesn't go. Zulu Kingdom for trainer Chad Brown started his career in France. He's won 2 straight here with Anticipation in the Pilgrim by combined margin of 2 necks. So we do not have a strong American cast in here. So let's talk about what you might be looking at in this year's Juvenile Turf.
Well, first of all, Zulu Kingdom may be the best of the Americans. He's not even an American. He started his career at St. Cloud back in June, and then shows up here and wins, as you mentioned, by two races by a grand total of a half length. All right. So he's the best of the Americans, which tells you something about that. And I don't want to downgrade him. I mean, he's cold. He can develop. But you've got some proven, really high class horses. We don't always get the best of the Europeans in this race, and they still seem to win. And we've got something close to the best here for sure. You've got a horse named Camille Pissarro, an Irish bred colt. All he did was win the big Group 1 race for 2-year-olds on Arc Day. He's supposed to come, what I've been told. And the colt that he beat is a very, very good horse named Rashabar. All he did was win the 20 two-runner Coventry Stakes at Royal Ascot this year, and was second in that same race, beaten the neck by Camilo Pissarro at Longchamp. And they're both supposed to be coming, and that they're a better grade of 2-year-old you're normally going to see. Now the question is, can they duplicate their best form on firm ground as they did over in France where it was soft? But they've run well on firm ground before, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. And if they're both trying 2 turns and a route of ground for the first time out, they have the pedigree to run long. That's not going to be an issue. It's just, you look at the form and you say, okay, maybe they won't, for whatever reason, reproduce their best form in Del Mar. That's possible. We've seen that happen. But if was that?
Yeah, go ahead.
But I was saying, but if they do reproduce their best form, the Americans are outclassed. And those are the two after the Euros.
One barometer we already have for that was the Summer Stakes at Woodbine, right? A kind of a neutral site, if you will, north of the border in Toronto. The Europeans came in and ran 1-2 in their New Century and Alcudra, and those are the 2 horses that are favored right now amongst the oddschecker.com betting. New Century at 6-1 for Andrew Balding. Alcudra, the Charlie Appleby runner in there who won the Pat Etery. He was second in the Summer Stakes as the even money favorite. He's 8-1 second choice. So the form from Europe was good in the Summer Stakes, and it's expected to carry over. And there might be some better horses coming over than just Alcudra and New Century, who have already been here in North America. Let's take a look at the video of a couple of those horses Jeff was talking about. Let's go back to Royal Ascot, where Rashabar on the far outside beats 22 rivals and pulls an 80-1 upset. Royal Ascot in the Coventry.
And it is just Cool Hoof Luke with Rashabar over on the far side leading that group. Trying to come through is Catalyze. Camille Pissarro the far side. Then Mr. Chaplin, the actor, looking to stay on. Cool Hoof Luke, the near side, still spread across the course. Cool Hoof Luke just with a fractional advantage. Rashabar over on the far side. Columnist is staying on. Coward of the County is picking up late. Rashabar the far side. Now coming Electrolyte, the near side, running close to the finish here. Rashabar the far side. Close call here, very close. Electrolyte is up there with Columnist and Rashabar the far side, tight between the 3 of them in the Coventry. Alcudra not a million miles away in behind with Symbol of Honor. It goes to the judge.
Rashabar by the narrowest of noses there under Billy the Kid, Billy Luckman, who came in and rode at Keeneland last weekend. We'll see if he'll get the return call aboard that one, coming here to the States for the Breeders' Cup. Other one, when we saw in the rematch, Rashabar would go against Camille Pissarro in the Prix Luc. I'm not even going through the whole name, the Lagardère and Longchamp on the ARC undercard. Let's go back and take a look at Camille Pissarro, a contender here, coming from Ireland via France.
Extreme right is Camille Pissarro, one from the right is Hookto. Misunderstood still showing in front here. Well down the straight to Rashabar, Field of Gold. Extreme left is Henri Matisse, who begins now to respond. Camille Pissarro, Sumion, blue and orange nearest to us coming into it as well. Wide open, 200 meters to go now. And as they run to the closing stages, Camille Pissarro from Rashabar, who's putting in a challenge to him. It'll be this pair as they race towards the line. Rashabar, the far side of Camille Pissarro. Camille Pissarro to Rashabar, Misunderstood, and Field of Gold was behind those. The outside of the 2 O'Brien runners, Camille Pissarro, number 10, has won very narrowly. Game run from Rashabar, number 8 in second place. There was only a head probably between them at the winning post.
So Camille Pissarro for Aidan O'Brien, who's had plenty of success in this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf over the years, could be one of the top contenders from over there. So we got a chance to see some European horses. We'll try to get some Japanese video for some horses for you coming up in the future weeks here as we get closer to the Breeders' Cup. And of course, the Japanese are going to have a major impact on the dirt races. We're talking about in the Classic for sure, the Distaff, a big contingent of Japanese horses numbering more than a dozen, I believe 18, 19 right now, something like that on the list, expected to ship with travel reservations, according to the head travel publicist for the Japanese horses on Twitter, Kaiba Kate. If you follow her, she does a good job keeping everybody updated on what's going on with the horses from overseas. Jeff, I can't wait to get into more research for this year's Breeders' Cup. This is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg for us, but gives us a good lead up into Future Stars Friday, and then it really gets, cranked down a week from tomorrow on Wednesday next week, when past performances and everything will be out for all the pre-entered horses. Then we can really get after it.
Really, you're right. There's still a lot of research to do, but I thought we'd get a head start on the Euros and the 2-year-olds because you really do have to research them. These horses have either less form than maybe that you'll have with the older horses, or they'll have form that you're not really able to grasp yet. So we're trying to give you a little bit of a heads up on some of the research we've already done. We just saw that race with Camille Pissarro beating Rashabar, and those two horses, they've had outstanding form throughout the entire year. They're not Johnny-come-latelys. They've been proven in top-class races for the last several months, and the form is held very, very strongly. So I think we're pretty confident about what we've seen there. Again, no guarantees, but going in, you'd like to have a little bit of an edge, a little bit of knowledge that the average punter won't have. And, again, we'll follow this up in the next couple of weeks with any added information we can get. But it's good to get a head start on them. And then the next week, we'll look at the Saturday program, and then we'll do something similar, trying to read between the lines and tell you what it looks like it's better than it is. And maybe some of these horses aren't quite as good as they look.
And be sure to go to XBTV over the next couple of weeks as workouts for the Breeders' Cup ensue in California, and more horses start to come in, clear quarantine, come out to the track. They're going to do a great job there getting you up to speed with all the workers at Del Mar. A lot of horses in Southern California working right now at Santa Anita before they head to Del Mar. So check all that out, xbtv.com, and have all the great workout information. And also be sure to check out our wager guide for the Breeders' Cup. We'll have an official First Bet and Express Bet Breeders' Cup wager guide that will be available a week from tomorrow for the beginning publication. It'll be a online searchable, accessible online wagering guide, so you can go through, and we're updating it constantly with more information. We're putting workouts into there, but all the history, all the background on all these races, all the wagering formats and all that kind of stuff like that will be out and ready to go. Profiles on a lot of the big horses next Wednesday. As soon as we know all the pre-entries, we'll go live with the wager guide, and that'll be set for you. So go to news.first.com and click on the wager guides, or expressbet.com, get the wager guide link there. But that'll be ready a week from tomorrow, next Wednesday, on the day that the pre-entries come out. Looking forward to that. Handicappers all across the First family will be handicapping all 14 Breeders' Cup races. You'll get video analysis from us, best bets on the card from all the handicappers across our properties for Friday and Saturday for the Breeders' Cup, and a big consensus grid. So a lot of information in there to digest, and that's why we want to get it out there early. We're not trying to be first. We're trying to give you a chance to prepare as you have the past performances and you're sitting down and starting to look and watch replays and things like that, putting it all together for you in one organized portal. That's the First Breeders' Cup wager guide. So be sure to check that out starting a week from tomorrow. Jeff, this was a great start, great list of races that you wanted to go through and review this week. And I can't wait to do it again in 7 days.
Yeah, we'll pick it up where we left off. You're right, though, about it's not necessarily important to be first. It's more important to be best. And I think we've got the information that you'll need, and got another week to not only examine and get more information about who's actually going to be running and who's not, but we got another week on the workouts to look at, and we'll be putting the microscope on those as well. And then also checking some of the performances and how they match up. And again, most of these races on Saturday, there are going to be plenty of cross examination of races in Europe, Japan, and the States. So it's going to be difficult, but we'll put in the work, and hopefully we'll give you a little bit of an edge.
It is Champions Day at Newmarket on Saturday. We've seen horses wheel back from British Champions and come right back here for the Breeders' Cup. So maybe there's still something to be found overseas this weekend. Week 3 at Keeneland rolling on. So should be a great week of racing. Jeff and I will be back on Friday for our First Call podcast, where we will handicap all of those races for the weekend. Big stakes at Remington Park on Friday night for Oklahoma Classics as well. So we'll line up 8 stakes races for you to handicap on Friday to get you set for this big weekend. And we'll be back again next Tuesday for our second of 2 parts on our Breeders' Cup look ahead. So on behalf of my partner, Jeff Siegel, and everyone with First Bet and Express Bet, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you Friday.